Hi there, Gary. Hi, everybody watching. Welcome to the latest edition of the Gary Neville Podcast. We've been treated, particularly in the second half here at Anfield, to a classic between two of our top teams in the country, with a good sprinkling of star names in the centre of it all as well. What have you made of it?
It took a little bit of time to get going. I mean, Liverpool, we thought, would be blistering in the first 20-25 minutes. We thought they would come out like a tornado, and they did for 5-10 minutes. But then it was as if their legs went very early in the game. And I think City came expecting this huge pressure, frantic from Liverpool, Jurgen Klopp, going back 5 years to the sort of heavy metal football. And I think City just thought, hang on a second, it's not coming, we might as well get into this game, we might as well start playing, and that's what happened. And
it's very different to the way they approached the Chelsea game, and they got a lot of praise for that, Manchester City, rightly so. They beat the European champions last weekend.
Yeah, they went for Chelsea. They really did press high, goal for them at Stamford Bridge, brilliant performance, and then very different against Liverpool here today, showed them a lot more respect. But it was as if Liverpool didn't have the belief to capitalise on that, and then all of a sudden City growing the game, and you start thinking to myself, what are Liverpool doing here? What's the tactic? And then you think, well, are the legs gone a little bit? There isn't the energy in the team. So it was a really surprising first half for me, and I thought during the first half that City would regret not scoring because they were by far the better team. Liverpool were nowhere near it. And I mean, I went to the toilet at half-time, which was a really brave decision through thousands of Liverpool fans. But the main message to me was that they were absolutely delighted to get in at half-time at 0-0.
Jamie Carragher, likewise, in our studio too. There was screaming for half-time.
Yeah. Look, I said after the Chelsea game here a few weeks ago, I didn't think that Liverpool were just right. And they're still setting a good standard. But the problem is they set themselves a standard that you very rarely see in English football a couple of years ago. And they're not at that standard. There's no doubt this team is not as good as the one that was 2-3 years ago when they were absolutely blistering in possession and out of possession. It's not quite the same physical performance, and I don't quite know why that is. Something's just gone a little bit. They've no doubt worked hard in this last 4 or 5 years. It's been an outstanding performance, but they look like they need a little refresh to get back up to that level. And this level that they're at now could still win them the title this season, but it's just not the same as it was. And it just allowed City in that first half to gain a lot of confidence. They're brilliant on the ball, City, and I don't think even they were at the best in the first half. A De Bruyne that was flying and accurate and precise, I think would have punished Liverpool in that first half.
But then at the start of the second half, two of Liverpool's greats from that team, and still greats now, showed how to get going, Salah to Mane, and suddenly that really triggered the rest of the game.
Yeah, what Salah does is conserve energy to a point whereby he's always got some spark left in him. When the ball comes to him, he can still produce brilliant moments. He skips past Rodri on that far side, and there's no doubt that the tactic from Liverpool was to get the ball in behind Diaz and get the ball away from Walker with Mane when the ball was on the opposite side of the pitch. They finally did it from a really good position. It was through Salah's brilliance. It was all about Salah. Obviously, he has to finish it, but Liverpool did start the second half better. I thought they may have made a change at half-time. He didn't, Jurgen Klopp. Well done to him. He sent his team out and they got that goal, and then you think, well, at least they've got something to hang on to, because you knew City would come back into it.
And they came back into it through, we've given joint man of the match, which we've never done before, and Phil Foden is the other half of the recipients with Mo Salah.
The second half was about, I mean, obviously it's about Liverpool and City, but it was about two special players, Salah and Foden. I wanted to say the word balls, and I'll go for it in the podcast, but he has got balls, Phil Foden, honestly. I know how difficult this place is to play. When you're a Mancunian and you come here, whether you're red of United or blue of City, this is the toughest place to come. And he just brilliant last year, brilliant this year. He looks like he wants this, and he's produced a special performance. It was a brilliant second half from him. He gets his goal, accuracy, precision,
yeah.
Ruthless, and you know there's an angle that I'm sure that everyone will have seen of it, and it's just a wonderful angle, just the focus and the precision of everything that he does. Maybe Alisson just gets drawn a little bit past the near post and just allows that little bit of a space, but he takes the opportunity, and they deserved it though, City. They really did deserve to come back into the game at 1-1.
And then the main talking point away from the goals, the foul by James Milner and the lack of a second yellow card, which kept Liverpool at full strength, and within moments from that they were 2-1 up, and
yeah.
Pep Guardiola went
ballistic,
absolutely daft, didn't he? Yeah.
He went ballistic.
Yeah.
I mean, James Milner could have given a penalty away in the first half. It was on the edge of the box. Did it travel into the box? He then gets booked. He then he should be sent off. There is no doubt it's a cynical sort of, he gives it that one sort of reverse sort of trip, and he stopped a dangerous attack. Bernardo Silva's on a run, and Pep Guardiola's absolutely fuming. Jurgen Klopp reacts straight away and gets Gomez changed and tries to get him on the pitch. Where I think Pep Guardiola will be even more furious is that I think James Milner had a part to play in the second goal, because he was building down that side and getting those throw-ins. And there's no doubt that obviously Liverpool with 10 men wouldn't have been able to do that. So it was a big moment in the game. I do think Paul Tierney will look at it tonight and think, did I just shirk it a little bit? I don't like saying the ref bottled it, but he shirked that decision. It was a tough one. Liverpool, Anfield, but I think he had to go.
And although Milner was still on the pitch, in that area where Mo Salah collected the ball, it was all about Salah. You run out of words in my job. You run out of descriptions, adjectives worthy of such a footballer.
He's the real thing and beyond. I mean, we talk about Messi and Ronaldo, and we don't put Salah into that category. We can't. But the new wave of great players in the world, Mbappe, Salah is there. I know he's 29 years of age, but really, the goals that he scored, the way in which he plays for Liverpool, his consistency, and even when the team aren't playing well, you've got this incredible talent. I know sometimes we talk about a front three with Liverpool. We talk about Firmino, Mane and Salah, and we put them all together into a bucket over the last 3, 4, 5 years because they have been absolutely awesome together. But he is a level above the other two. He's a level above, and the other two are fantastic players. I love all three of them. And I was saying a few years ago when City had that front three of Aguero, Sterling and Sané, that I thought Liverpool's front three were better then. And I still think they're better now. And if that front three of Liverpool's was in the City team, this league would be done by Christmas. I am telling you, this league would be finished by Christmas. They just haven't got the cutting edge up front City that Liverpool have still got. And Salah is a world-class player. Could play in any team in the world at any time in history of football. His goal record is special, and that goal to deliver it was an unbelievable goal. That really was.
And Phil Foden, though, he was undeterred, and he came back and he set up another spectacular goal from Kevin De Bruyne, who perhaps wasn't at his best, but produced the moment that got City a point.
He did. I mean, it would have been brilliant today to see Trent Alexander-Arnold on that right-hand side against Phil Foden, wouldn't it? Flying forward, see what Foden had done going that way, and then obviously the other way, Trent would have come under real pressure. It wasn't to be, and then Foden still, as the game emerged and the game played on, you always knew that he was the route back into the game. He gets the space down that left-hand side, and they don't want to go close to him. The defenders don't want to go close to him because he can just accelerate and just nip in through you. He's got a change of pace. People say to me, what was the most difficult thing when you played against a player? Yeah, pace was a problem. But the ability to stand still and go from a standing start or a slow movement to a quick movement and sort of that burst and change of pace is the most dangerous thing. It's the thing you don't like. And he's got that, and that's why I think players don't like getting close to him. He finds Kyle Walker, who just sort of like, goes past him to De Bruyne. And De Bruyne, who I do think was sloppy, a wonderful player. I haven't got anything bad to say about him, but he's certainly not at his best. He just gets a little bit of good fortune because I think actually Alisson would have saved it, and Matip tries to clear it and it ends up in the back of the net. But it would have been a real travesty today, I think, if City hadn't got a point at least out of that game.
Neither go top, but a fair result.
I think Pep Guardiola will be, I think he'll be proud. I think he'll be proud of how his team have played this week. That was a hell of a week he's just come through, and his players have just come through. But I think he's the one that will think that we should have won the 3 points and could have won the 3 points. But if you take 4 points away at Chelsea, that Chelsea team and this Liverpool team, you've had a great week. I know they've lost in midweek, but they still played really well. I think Pep Guardiola will be delighted and will leave here delighted. Jurgen Klopp will be happy that he's got a point here today, but they were at full pelt, Liverpool, to have to stay with this City team. They really were.
A City twice coming from behind.
Yeah, and deservedly. They deserve to draw that game. As I say, I think that if City hadn't have won that game, then Jurgen Klopp will have gone away tonight thinking, how's that happened? And I think City will have gone home, and Pep Guardiola, he celebrates goals, Pep Guardiola, but that second one went in. That's one of the sort of most ferocious celebrations that we've seen because he knew that was a big moment. His team have delivered here today. City have delivered here. We say that Chelsea are going to win the league, and I think they could, but this City team are special. There is one thing that stands in the way. Everybody in the league knows it. Everybody in Manchester City knows it. Everybody in punditry knows it, and in the country. Have they got that ruthless, cutting edge, in games, because there's just a pattern emerging of not scoring. I know they scored 2 today, but really in the first half they should have been out of sight. And will that cost them come January, come the end of the season? Will they just fall short because they haven't got that striker who's going to go and get that 25 goals for them, that 30 goals? They can all contribute, we know, but they do lack that point up front. That's something. And I said during the game, we've been really, I suppose, and rightly so, praising Manchester City's recruitment in terms of what they've done over the last few years, and Pep Guardiola gets the best out of them. But to not get a centre forward in the last 2 or 3 years to really replace, Dzeko leaves, and obviously Aguero's coming to the end. It's not as if it's been a shock. They know it's been coming, and Jesus haven't quite been trusted by Pep.
And they didn't go all the way for Harry Kane.
They didn't go all the way for Harry Kane, but okay, if you're saying that Manchester City aren't going to go all the way for Harry Kane, if he was available or not, then Manchester City have done that before with Alexis Sanchez, where they've said, no, that's our sort of ceiling, we're not going past it. But then have a plan B. You expect that a club like City have got someone else lined up that can come in, even as a temporary measure, to come in and do a job for them for 12 months. And they haven't got that. And I do wonder, come the end of the season, I know Pep Guardiola loves the idea of playing with a team of midfield players, but there is that feeling, that's doubt, that only exists through the lack of a striker. If Manchester City had Harry Kane, I'm telling you now, this league is done. It's done. Forget the form that Harry Kane's currently in or what he's doing at Tottenham. Him out there on that pitch today, amongst that City group of players, he's definitely taking a chance in that first half. He's scoring a goal, and he's gold. So I just remove all doubt from the doubt that I have got at City. There is a doubt over City, and that doubt is just that one thing.
The one player they were going to sign was Cristiano Ronaldo. We better move on to the other half of Manchester.
Do we have
to? We've had these conversations a lot, haven't we? The Solskjaer United, really, as to what the structure is. Is it just reliance on the high-quality players to win you a game because they can do individually? And they've come up short. I commentated on the Villarreal game, and they were very lucky to win that game. Cristiano Ronaldo did what he can do. He wrote another fairy story into his book. But where are they? We're a week on since we last talked about them, and it's the same, isn't it?
We're no different. We haven't got the Champions League, as you know, and I'm sat at home watching that game against Villarreal the other night. And ordinarily, when Manchester United score in the last minute in the Champions League, I'll ordinarily raise a glass of wine and try and do something a little bit tricky on Instagram or social media to wind the masses up. I couldn't do it. On Wednesday night, that goal went in, and I thought that was a really poor performance, and that's going to catch you out. And my immediate thought was, Everton will do you on Saturday. That was my immediate thought after Villarreal. And that's why I didn't tweet out, because I just felt disappointed that Villarreal are a good team, don't get me wrong, but the ability to counter-attack so many times, create so many chances, that cannot happen. And I've been in that home dressing room at Old Trafford and on that pitch a lot over a 15, 20-year period. And there were periods where teams would counter-attack against us in seasons. And in those seasons, you don't win the league. I'm telling you now, and that's why I said it 4 weeks ago, if you can't sustain attacks at Old Trafford and you're letting teams penetrate back through you on the counter-attack, you ain't winning that league. Because those players will tell you that they're in the dressing room. They won't tell us, actually, because I can tell you exactly what they're thinking. Having to run back to your own goal at Old Trafford when you've tried an attack and it's end-to-end is not the way in which you go about winning a trophy, a league trophy. So they're going to get caught out. And I thought Everton would do them on the counter-attack. I thought Rafa Benitez would know exactly what he was going to do. They'd had a free week, and I thought Everton would win that game on Saturday. I watched the game yesterday, and it didn't surprise me. It surprised me that Everton didn't win. I thought they would go and win. Because you have to stop counter-attack. You have to sustain attacks, and you have to keep the team pending. Pep Guardiola, over the years, people will talk about his football, his possession, his points, but he sustains attacks, as do Jurgen Klopp's team. They push up the pitch, and they have a way of being able to ring the box when they're attacking so that the other team can't get out. Manchester United don't do that. They let teams counter-attack through them all the time. So why is that? Maybe they've got too many attacking players on the pitch. Maybe the attacking players they've got on the pitch aren't alert enough to what's going on, and they aren't smart enough to be able to spot the danger in the game. But something's got to change. And the first thing that I said a few days ago was, I think Ole is going to have to pick a team that plays in the league. When I've seen Jose Mourinho, even Sir Alex Ferguson going back 20 years, but Jose Mourinho trying to win it and form a team at Chelsea, Pep Guardiola trying to form a team at Manchester City, and Jurgen Klopp trying to form a team at Liverpool, they keep a settled 11 as much as possible and let that team build. Ollie at the moment is rotating like Sir Alex Ferguson used to, because he's got access to so many players. He's almost picking different teams every game, and there are 4 or 5 changes. That has got to stop now. And I hope that this international break is a time, obviously, for Manchester United to reflect, for Ollie and his coaching team to reflect. He's got to pick a way of playing, which he has. He's got the 4-2-3-1. He's got to select an 11, understand that you will have injuries and you might want to refresh it once or twice. But he's got to pick a team in the league and let that team build an identity, build a style, because you keep changing 3 or 4. That's the only thing that I can suggest at this moment in time, because the style and identity isn't there. And they do win games in moments and play in moments. And I said that last weekend, and I said it 4 or 5 weeks ago. And the other thing I would say is Cristiano Ronaldo needs players around him who are going to work really hard defensively. That was the same in 2008, by the way. So in 2008, Ji-sung Park and Darren Fletcher and Owen Hargreaves and Wayne Rooney and Carlos Tevez, they all worked like Trojans to make up for Cristiano in terms of what he was doing. You went to Barcelona in 2008 in the semi-final. We stick Cristiano up. The manager sticks Cristiano Ronaldo up top. He puts Wayne Rooney on the wing with Ji-sung Park and gets them to double up and work really hard in a 4-4-2 with Carlos Tevez just dropping in on Busquets. And I was watching that game yesterday thinking to myself, well, if Cristiano's playing and the same on Wednesday night, you've got to put players in around him who are going to forgive the fact that he isn't going to press from the front. He isn't going to run hard. He isn't going to close people down. You're almost carrying a player when you're out of possession. But we were 10 years ago, 12 years ago, but you forgive that because of his greatness and his ability to win games. And my view on it would be to pick a group of players around Cristiano Ronaldo, whether that's Cavani as well up front, who works hard, and play Cristiano just a little bit off him to the left, which is where I think he likes to play. And then around that, you just get some really hard-working, whether that's the great players in the squad, the talented players in the squad, or whether that's some dogs like Jesse Lingard and players like that. You know, for Jesse Lingard today, you've got Ji-sung Park and players like that years ago. The best players don't make the best team. That's why I had a career at Manchester United. It's why Darren Fletcher, Nicky Butt, Ji-sung Park, Owen Hargreaves and players like that ilk had careers at Manchester United, because you need soldiers alongside the generals that you've got. And Manchester United have got a lot of generals, but unless those generals are going to start working hard, they ain't going to win anything. And then Ollie will be in trouble. So Ollie's got to look after himself, and that might mean that he has to upset some players that have got maybe nice price tags and they've got lovely reputations and they look great on the team sheet, but they ain't going to win you anything if you don't have a group of players that are going to work hard out of possession, because Manchester United are a million miles away from what I've seen here today. Let's be really clear. They're nothing like these two teams. But they could be if they get a group of players out on the pitch that complement each other. And at the moment, there's far too many of the same type.
What did you make of Ronaldo stalking off at the end, having been brought on as a substitute, and the game going away? They didn't win the game. It didn't seem to fit in with perhaps what conventional watching of football. You don't see players. It seemed a personal statement rather than a statement for the team. Am I being unfair by saying
No,
that?
you're not being unfair. I watched the game. I watched him walk off. I can't say I like it, because I think that when you're... Look, is Cristiano upset when he doesn't play? Yes. Is Cristiano upset when he doesn't score? Yes. Is Cristiano annoyed as hell when the team don't win? Of course. We know those things. He doesn't have to prove that. So he walked off the pitch muttering to himself, which in some ways throws the sort of questions up in the air. What's he saying? Who's he annoyed with? And it can only come back to the manager. So I do think actions like that, Cristiano's smart enough to know that will bring real pressure on the manager, more pressure than he's already under, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. It is what it is. But I think that that's just something that just has to be managed in the next couple of months. Cristiano's not always going to score. He maybe can't play every single game. But I think if he's going to walk off like that, it's going to put immense pressure on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, more pressure than he's already under. And there's no doubt the talk after the game yesterday was about the manager. You know, he's got these collection of players. They haven't got a style of play. They haven't got this. They haven't got that.
He didn't pick Ronaldo.
He didn't pick Ronaldo. But, look, the worst that can happen for me with Ole is that he's been an incredible bridge from, I think, not a dark period for the club, but a period where the club lost its identity and it lost its way. There is no doubt the club lost its way in reaction to Sir Alex Ferguson's leaving the club for a 5, 6, 7 year period. All it has returned some of the values back to the club, where there are a group of players there who I think do want to play for the club. I do think that the signings have been a lot more like Manchester United would sign. I do now, though, think with the signing of Cristiano Ronaldo, Sancho and Varane, and I want to mention Sancho a little bit at the end of this podcast, or maybe not the end of it, but certainly at the end of this Manchester United section. I do think with those players signed, they're recognised world-class talents, and with that comes a pressure to deliver. And when I said last week it was make or break for Ollie, I mean that he knows that. I think he said it in his press conference. He said, I speak a lot, Gary Neville, but I also think he recognised he does have to win. You have to win a trophy when you're 3-4 years in and you've got players like that. So I think he has to look after himself, Ollie. I think he has to be selfish. I think he has to make sure that he manages Cristiano in such a way, and we will do. He's managed Paul Pogba for the last couple of years pretty well, Ollie. I think he'll have a word with Cristiano and say, look, come on, if we're going to do that, let's do it in the changing room, because ultimately you doing that on the pitch does bring that extra pressure. He has got a massive reputation, and I don't think it would have helped Ollie in that situation. But on the other hand, Cristiano's not going to be, he's not a sheep either. He's not just going to follow and say, oh, I'm not going to show anything. He will demonstrate, I think, his dislike and his lack of happiness with that situation.
Jadon Sancho.
I thought, yesterday you come off that game and everyone's disappointed. I thought Sancho yesterday for 20 minutes gave his best 20 minutes in a United shirt. I thought that was the one big positive of that match, and they didn't lose, was that actually they're still up there in the league, and that Sancho got onto the pitch, which has been a difficult start for him. I think Manchester United fans are still working him out and still getting to know him, and he's still getting to know Manchester United. He's been overtaken, a £70-odd million signing, and he's been overtaken by the likes of Varane and Ronaldo in terms of sort of the publicity and the sort of furore. So he's almost like slipped into the club, and he's been a little anonymous in the first few weeks and probably frustrated. But I thought he did really well in that 20 minutes yesterday. You saw glimpses of what he can deliver, little passes with Ronaldo in that left channel, little slide passes like we saw from Salah to Mane today. So I think it's worth mentioning that we saw a good little period from him, and that was a positive, because I think he'll go into the international break when Gareth Southgate mentioned that he was fortunate to be selected because he hasn't been at his best. I think it'll give him a good little bit of confidence and sends him off in a happier mood than maybe he would have been if he hadn't played that 20 minutes.
You're talking about the international break. Let's finish with two related subjects, really. One, the players. We saw the 4 Brazilians out there chatting at the end from either side. They're going off, and then they will have to come back into a quarantine period, which allows them to go to work, incidentally. They can play football and train, but they can't live with their families. And they're away 12 days with their country, and then a 10-day quarantine period away. So psychologically and humanitarian terms, it's not great. I mean, is that something we just have to accept? And those footballers, as I understand it, have all chosen to go and go through this period.
Look, I mean, as a football player, you accept that you're away a lot. It isn't ideal being away when you don't need to be, or when you feel as though ultimately you're living under, obviously, the rules that we're living under. But it is what it is, Martin. We know there are still people dying in the country from the virus. We know that we're coming into the winter season where cases are still going to be high. And what I would say is that football players are accustomed to being away from their families for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time through tournaments and through other reasons in pre-season. Sometimes they go on tours. So it's not unusual. It's not something that's ideal. It's not unusual. It's something that players will have to accept. And the circumstances that the country and the world are in at this moment in time, then, we saw what happened with the Brazil-Argentina situation last time. It was farcical. And it is what it is. The players have got a choice to make. It doesn't surprise me that the 4 players have decided to go. 1, because of their professionalism. 2, because of their love for their country and they want to go and play and represent their country.
I think Mane's going as well, and obviously for Senegal.
Yeah, and why not? You've got to go and play for your country if you're selected. It isn't ideal, but they'll have to cope with it, and it is a moment in time.
That leads me on to the last point, maybe, which was Jurgen Klopp's impassioned speech about vaccination and the fact that obviously it's not compulsory in this country. In America, in the basketball, they're saying if you don't have a double vaccination, you don't play, and that leads to not getting paid. Is that a step too far, or something that we can learn from? Are you surprised that the number of players who have had double vaccination is relatively low, say, compared to the rest of the country? We don't know the exact figure.
It is low. It's low all over the country, not just in the Premier League, but in the Football League as well. Yeah. It's very low, as we know. In non-league, I think it'll be low. I don't agree with forced vaccination, and the idea of taking wages off players who aren't vaccinated is beyond a step too far. It's absolutely wrong. We all have our own opinions on this, but I'm very uncomfortable with forcing anybody to have medicine, essentially. Ultimately, I get the fact that, we maybe should encourage, we should maybe make them aware and educate and try and say, look, this is the reason that we're doing it, but I am absolutely against forced vaccination. I think we have to have, it's a liberal society, we live in a
Jurgen Klopp says you can't drink and drive, and everyone accepts that as... That's in his words, not mine. He said there's a restriction of freedom, and this is a forced vaccination for people in certain professions, like football.
Yeah,
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, no, and I don't want this to be a Gary Neville versus Jurgen Klopp. It's absolutely not, because I've held this opinion from the very beginning, and Jurgen Klopp may have held his opinion, and I wouldn't suggest for 1 second that Jurgen Klopp is wrong. I have my opinion. Forcing people to have a vaccination and forcing people to do it and to get their money, which is what you're telling me is happening in America, is my opinion.
Well, they're not being forced, they're just being told they don't get their money.
They don't get their money if they're not vaccinated. Well, to be fair, to me, that's not right. That is absolutely not right. And there may be people who are watching this podcast who disagree with me. It's a personal opinion.
It'll be seen in America, this podcast.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's fine. Hopefully in America they can listen to it and determine that I'm wrong, or they can determine that I'm right. I would, we can encourage players to be vaccinated, but we can't force them, in my opinion, to be vaccinated. And the idea that next November, December, we're going to have a World Cup where if players aren't vaccinated, they can't go to the tournament, I'm against that. I'm against that 100%. We have to ask... What I'm a little bit surprised at the moment is, look, all over the country in every club, there's probably about a 50% or less take-up from professional football
Some
players.
Clubs in the Premier League. There are a couple of clubs, I believe, with 100%.
There are a couple of clubs with 100%.
In the Premier League.
Yeah, but generally, I think most clubs are struggling to get all their players to be vaccinated in this country. We have to, one, accept and understand why that is. But I think also maybe it's time for the players or the PFA to come out and explain what the concerns are that the players have and why they're not taking these vaccinations. And I know there is a feeling, having spoken to one or two, that there have been some incidents across the globe where fit and well athletes have had the vaccination and then they've had incidents in the weeks after. And there is a nervousness that they are fit and healthy people and they don't want to take a vaccine that hasn't gone through the most rigorous of testing that maybe other vaccines have had in the past. And I'm not supporting this view, I'm just explaining to you what I'm hearing from players. And people might be listening to this and saying, well, that's wrong. But they are getting it from somewhere, these players, and they believe it. And they think it's a bigger risk to have the vaccination against having it. Now, that's the position I think they're in. But I think it's about time now.
Jurgen Klopp's point, Gary, was that it's not just about yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
It's what you do in terms
Martin,
of spreading it to people, being in a sociable situation where you are more likely to spread it.
Yeah, but we've had Van Tam now going meeting with players to try and have it, because I think they recognise. The government recognise the influence that football players have, and when they hear that football players aren't having the vaccine, they think that could spread as a message to younger people in this country. Maybe it is doing. So I can understand completely why that's happening. However, I think it's now time probably for the PFA to come out and speak on behalf of the players who aren't vaccinated as a group, because I can think that those players would want to keep their medical confidentiality. But I think it's about time now the PFA came out and spoke about this situation and explained why players don't want to be vaccinated and what their concerns are, because I think this issue is going to go on. What keeps happening is the Premier League think, well, we're going to introduce forced vaccine, and then they back off because they recognise that basically this league would fall over. Then you hear that sort of the government are getting involved. Then you hear that it's forced vaccinations for the World Cup. If it's forced vaccination for the World Cup in 12 months' time, you'll have a lot of countries going there without players, unless players about turn, which I don't sense that players are that type. So I think there is a situation that is simmering. It's not being dealt with, I don't think, in a way at this moment in time which is definite. I think it's a case of you're either going to have to go for it if you're the authorities, or you're going to have to step off the players. And I think behind the scenes there's probably a lot of talking going on and a lot of nervousness about making that what would be final decision.
It's like the cricket, isn't it? Going to the Ashes, exactly the same.
It is. And look, it depends what sort of corner you're in, and it depends what part of what you're thinking and what your reasons are. But the idea of taking away choice from people, I'm so uncomfortable with. That is where I'm at. You have to have choice in life. And for me, I'm against forced vaccination, but I also understand the reason that some people believe in forced vaccination, but I'm personally against it.
A serious subject. But
Very serious, and needs dealing with, I think.
Yeah.
And needs a clear approach. It needs real leadership. A difficult subject. I don't think we could point the finger at players or the Premier League or the government on this particular issue. It is a delicate situation that's poised at this moment in time. I suspect behind the scenes there's a lot of things going on, a lot of talks going on about how they shift this situation forward. There's a bit of jostling in terms of threatening and, go on, you have to have it or else you can't do this, or you can't play here, or you can't go there. But players aren't wilting. This has been 6 months now that players up and down the country are saying, no, we're not doing it. And I own a football club. I won't force our players at Salford City to have the vaccination. I won't. I won't force them to have it. If they want to have it, they will have it. I think our doctor has had numerous conversations with them, as had our medical department. But if the players make that decision not to have it, I would and have respected that decision and would not interfere, would not even discuss it with them. It's medical confidentiality. It's not my job as an owner of a football club to determine what you put inside your body. I'm sorry, that to me is crossing a line. So that's my position, but I do think it's a situation that isn't going to go away.
Gary, thank you.
Thank you.